Racism at its core is a belief in the biological superiority of one group over another, first and foremost.
Bad law have bad results, and this is a bad law.
You have to get involved. You have to know who the county prosecutors are. You can't keep voting these people in, and you can't vote by, like by not going to vote. You're giving them your vote.
There's been a lot of talk about voting. And what I can tell you is there's merit to the argument, but voting for you is going to be more difficult going forward. Because of the Supreme Court's ruling, states will, and the state actors that are responsible for organizing the elections, who have an intent to disenfranchise minority voters, are going to make it more difficult. And so now more than ever, you're going to have to pay attention to the election process, like never before. Minorities that don't have certain types of identification, permanent residents who fear government for a variety of reasons, including the intimidation of immigrants. This general kind of culture of xenophobia will play a role. And so we have to be on our P's and Q's now more than at any other time in the last 30 years. I want to say, though, that this question of what crime to charge, I think is practical and academic. That there was race politics involved in this case. And the decision to go for second-degree murder was also a decision that was agreed upon by those involved with the race politics in the case. Whether or not it was a good decision, I think we can debate, and I think Attorney Jara has put forward a very useful and valid argument there. What I would say, though, is that it does matter whether manslaughter is included as the primary charge or the secondary charge, because the strategy of prosecution differs if it's a manslaughter case. The type of evidence that you look at, the strategy of prosecution itself entirely is different because you don't have to prove the same thing. And so I think a manslaughter charge would have been more pragmatic here. But politically, if the prosecution would have done that and not pursued second-degree murder, race politics would have been amplified in the case. And so the prosecutors are put in a very difficult position. I think the prosecution did not present an authentic narrative of what happened in the case. They didn't track it stage for stage. They were passionate. They put on a very good oral presentation. The argumentation for what they were pursuing seemed to be strong, but there was a gap in terms of what the prosecution's narrative is about what happened, and the defense laid it out, and they even had used very sophisticated technology to make their case. The prosecution did not create the kind of culture that would allow a jury to empathize with Trayvon Martin. Trayvon Martin was put on trial, not George Zimmerman. And I think the prosecution could have been more strategic in their approach. But all of that said, I still think that we have a question of empathy that is the root problem here. The jury was critical, and we've heard different formulas, bringing a jury from the outside, the judge's determinations about striking two jurors that could have been on the jury, and they were African American. The defense played the race card from the very beginning because they didn't want two African Americans to sit on the jury. But when you have a group of people who are unwilling to empathize with those people or them or the other because they live a certain way that is far different than I think even if you have all your nuts and bolts together, you come out the same way with this jury. I don't think that if the prosecution could have had its way, if they would have taken the recommendations of those of us who are looking back, if they would have brought in a jury from the outside that had the same mentality, we would have ended up with the same result. Because the problem here is that race and the inability to empathize with young black men is the core of the problem of not just the criminal justice system, but these types of prosecutions. And it's not just white people that fail to empathize. We as minorities often are the first ones to judge black men as well. And we have to be honest about that in our discussion. I'll leave it there.
I hear this is what could have happened, this is where the prosecutor failed, this is what they didn't do. And to me, it seems that it only reflects what also some have said, that it's just the system that worked like that. That's what we saw at each step, how the system just failed Trayvon, but that's the way, and we can point at, okay, this is how they could have done this is how Trayvon was criminalized, but we just saw that on TV. So at the end, I'm thinking, yes, of course, we should go vote, we should be involved, but if the system, that won't change the system. So it's important to do that, it seems to me, but we still have to take it to the street. Because if we go back home and say, all right, tomorrow I'm going to vote, tomorrow I'm going to send money, fine, but I'm not changing the system by doing this.
And it has to do with neighborhood. Zimmerman was a neighborhood watch with a gun. You don't watch a gun. That's number one. Number two, what neighborhood did Zimmerman live in? Because right now, throughout America, there is a re-solidification of white people in their own little pocket communities. It's called white-topia. You can Google it, you can YouTube, it's called white-topia, where there's these pockets coming up where it's only white neighborhood. Here. Now maybe black people, we had one thing called maybe. And 9 times out of 10 we were living with other Hispanics and other people, but white people of a certain economic position, they are living in an all-white neighborhood. So you're going to have other whites in neighborhood watches, like Zimmerman, who's going to feel that he can protect with a gun of somebody that looks different. Before they go to trial, before anybody goes to trial, we live in a community, and there are places in Miami where I know I can't walk through because I'm black. And if there's going to be more pocket communities, white people are resegregating themselves. So Trayvon is going to be more of a trend in the future if more white people, and they're doing it, resegregate themselves in these white neighborhoods. What type of neighborhood was Zimmerman in to make him feel that he deserves to carry a gun on a neighborhood watch to see a kid that looks different than him, and after the operator told him, do not follow him, or let the police handle it, he felt entitled to disobey that order, to follow that kid in. That, and this is before trial. And nobody has addressed it. What type of neighborhoods are now springing up in America where the re-solidification of white people feel that they are entitled to the point of killing an innocent black annually before it gets to trial?
I had a related question that triggered from what he said, and the story was that Zimmerman's father was a judge. It seemed to me that there was some sort of way in which he had the benefit of additional expertise beyond what they got. I don't know if anybody wants to respond to that.
I mean, yeah, I mean, the judge, he grew up understanding the law. His mother was a court reporter, his father was a magistrate, plus he took criminal justice courses. So he knew the law, he knew what he had to say, and that's what happened.
Most of our country is still as segregated today as it was 100 years ago. I think one of the things that was missed, two things that were missed in this trial, but one of them speaks to your point. If you speak to any law enforcement officer, and hopefully we have one or two feds here. No, I mean that seriously. I actually requested that one be here. They'll tell you that, first of all, it's very unusual at the local level for any neighborhood watch person to be armed. We know that. And he was armed with a very cheap gun, by the way, one of the cheapest handguns that you can get. And it's important for reasons that the defense didn't get into, but could have got into, because of the reliability of the weapon, but I'll leave that aside. Those who have weapons and carry them, it's typical to carry a semi-automatic handgun with a clip, but not with a round in the chamber. It's very rare that a civilian walks around with a round in the chamber of the gun, and that was not emphasized enough by the prosecution. You do not put a round in the chamber unless you are willing to use the weapon. You make the weapon hot when you do that, okay? And George Zimmerman made his weapon hot for a reason. He could have had a round in the clip, and anyone who knows how to handle a gun knows that even if you're smaller dealing with a much larger person, which is not the case here, if you get hit in the face with a piece of steel, it's enough to take down the biggest person. You can pistol whip someone and knock them out right there. So there are a lot of things that he could have done that he didn't do. It was a very clean shot right up to the chest, which raises questions that I don't know why the prosecution didn't raise at all. There's more. I'll stop there because it will come back up. Let me stop.
For redress for Trayvon, I've been hearing that if you go to the Department of Justice, what is it, Justice Department, that they don't have enough meat to bring a charge. I've also heard in the civil case, there's another problem. Is this the end of what's the fate of Trayvon?
I'm also a criminal defense attorney in Miami-Dade County. I'm a former public defender. And I'm a trial lawyer, try cases. And I do think, if I could kind of answer that, I think it's the end. Because I don't think it passes muster for a federal case. But I think public opinion and public pressure might bring it there. And then one of my questions is, what about the disappointment at that point? Because I predict there probably will be another disappointment. And how do we rectify it when there's a federal verdict? Because, you've never seen a attorney general actually solicit the public on whether they're going to make a prosecutorial decision, and that is strange. But that's what's happening. But all these things have been said, and I don't want to talk as a lawyer, I just want to say as a person, and as a black person, all of those things I don't think would have changed any of this. I really believe that it stops and ends with race, and how we view each other, and how we feel about each other. And I guess I just want to know, what are we going to do? What's next? Because I didn't sleep and haven't slept well for days because there's something in my chest that I just can't rectify, and there's nothing I can do with it. So I'm sure there are people all around this country that feel like me, and I want to know, what are we going to do about that feeling? Because there's so many schools of thought. There's so many schools change the system, and we're trying to operate within a system that was never created for our benefit. So why do we keep asking them, please, please include us and change it? What are we going to do as a people, assertively, to change what we are going to do individually? Is it Pan-Africanism? Is it Garveyism? What is it that we are going to do that is a viable option, or viable options for our people?
I still want to add in this area.
When you were comparing Emmett Till to Trayvon Martin, I understood a little bit of it, but I was somewhat lost.
I'll let someone else answer what else can be done in the Trayvon Martin case. But as far as the sister who's a former public defender, what you and I know, and what other people may not know, is that these laws that people want to change will disproportionately affect the people that we defend, who look just like you and I. Right. Exactly. So people, I think that it's easy to rev up black people's feelings and emotions. This is a tragedy, as you said. It's a travesty. It hurts. Just like the president said, it's a lot of pain, it hurts. But we have to be careful with our actions. Because when we take actions in the criminal justice system, it's not hurting the Casey Anthonys and the George Zimmermans, it's hating the Tyrone Farrells of the world. That's who it comes back to hurt. You talk about what we can do. In 2000 and Is it 8 or 10? 2010. I think it was 2010. I forget now. But in Broward County, what happens is typically you have, as I said, we have 90 judges. No one challenges sit-in judges, especially not black attorneys. A black attorney would not dare challenge a sit-in judge, no matter what they think, right? No matter what they think about that judge, they wouldn't do it. In 2010, I challenged Judge Lee Seidman for his position, because I wasn't going to beg anyone for it, because I felt I was entitled to it just like he felt like he was entitled to it, and I was going to take it from him. That's what I did, and that's what you could do. There are judges in... I don't care. I tell people, you know what? I'd rather have 10 stupid, dumb black judges than 10 stupid, dumb white judges. They have 110 in Dade County. And you know you've sat in front of some judges and you've looked at them and said, come on, what school did you graduate from? Where did you get your degree? Are you kidding me? But who challenges that judge? Well, you have to challenge that judge. And then the people who are here who see you, they have to contribute to your campaign. So you're not out there struggling every night to raise money for your campaign. This is how we make the change. And when we talk about the system, we change the system by doing things like that. State of Florida has 500,000 more registered Democrats than Republicans. That's 500,000 more Democrats than Republicans. The state legislature has a supermajority Republican. How is that possible? We have to be the change we want to see. We have to support each other. We have to support sisters like that. We have to tell her, sister, run for judge, and I'll send you $50, and I'll get down, you know what, not only will I send you $50, but I'll get 50 of my friends to contribute $50, and I'll walk in my neighborhood for you, and I'll get you some absentee ballots. That's what I'll do for you. No one is going to listen to us if we're always begging. I agree with you. I hate to see that. I hate to see when black attorneys talking about, oh, I want to be appointed by the governor. Negro, run. Challenge somebody and run for the position. Don't ask anyone for anything. Do it. It's your position. Run for it. So that's what we could do.
The first question is whether or not a civil rights case will prevail. The important thing is that they're going to investigate it. It's a high standard and we might not make it. As it relates to civil, they're only going to sue him if he has money. Right now he has no money because it could take $1 million to sue him civilly. If he wins the case, remember he has a case that he's bringing against NBC because they doctored his recording. The way they edited it, it sounded as if he was the one saying that it was a black person, when in fact, it was the 911 operator asked for a description. But when NBC edited it, it sounded like he said it, okay? So if he wins that, then there's a pot of money coming in that the civil attorneys might be able to get at. But right now, if he has no money, they're going to wait because the statute of limitation has not run, so they can wait. He's perhaps going to do a book, so maybe they can get some money there, but they're going to wait a little bit. I do believe, though, that we still have self-defense, common law self-defense. So even if we no longer have stand your ground, we still can have the same common law of self-defense. Because how many black people, how many of us have ever won a stand your ground case? It's nice to be on the book. 13%, it's a big deal. It's nice on the book. I have a client who killed somebody. He says it's self-defense. Everybody saw it, so I will figure out the self-defense business. But I don't know any black defendant who has ever won stand your ground. It's a big deal. We still have self-defense. And I'd love for you to answer her MFT question because she needs to hear it, and you know it.
You asked why I draw the parallel between Emmett Till and Trayvon. Because they were both young men. And Emmett Till was only 14. They both were killed in very horrible circumstances. They both had trials that went nowhere. But the situation has changed. Today, if you will, it's simplistic to say, in the old days we had Jim Crow, now you've got Jim Crow Esquire, white collar. So things are different, they're more sophisticated and more difficult to deal with. But the principle is just the same. The injustice that occurred to Emmett Till was so horrible that it struck a tone across the country and moved this country towards what turned out to be, the 64 civil rights, 65 civil rights. I think that Trayvon Martin had, because it is also strikes at people's hearts. And we're getting a movement across the country that we're beginning to see it, and a broad scale movement can be turned to the same kind of encouragement and thrust that commits people to want to do something, not just sit back and talk about it, not sit back and complain, but get out and do something. Run for office, for example, is an excellent thing to do. So that's the parallel that I hope will come from this. And I'd like to just comment on the thing that laws get turned around to hurt black folks. I don't think there's any question. I mean, there's an old saying that says, as soon as the black community learns the rules, we change the rules. So that does happen. I do have a certain amount of confidence in not in necessarily the broad speaking public, but I do have a lot of confidence in the people in the legal system that are working to try to move on things like stand the ground law. People like the Legal Defense Fund, people like the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. They're very much attuned to what they know that the black defendants have a hard time in our court system as it is with all of the things that say burden of proof, etc., and have certainly no desire to strip those away from anybody, and will be judicious in the type of changes that actually finally get pushed for. I'm not talking about all the rhetoric now, but I think the people looking at that are very well cognizant of what can happen.
I want to answer a question of what now, but I want to make clear this was not a stand your ground defense. So the discussion about stand your ground and Attorney General Holder's proclamations will not solve the problem. Period. You can repeal all the laws you want, you still have traditional self-defense, and we're still left with having to deal with not just a race card, but a race debt that is stacked against us. And until we're willing to have honest conversation, not us, but the rest of America that doesn't want to have it, will never be able to deal with these issues, because you can't legislate and litigate character. You just can't do it. Now, with respect to the comment about Zimmerman not having money, there has been a plethora of resources from white supremacist institutions and those who are empathetic to the cause of killing a black teenager that have contributed. The lawyers are not doing this for free. There is a question of future earnings, book rights, movie rights, and there's a very good example with the Goodman family and what they did to OJ. So there is a precedent for taking action that would not just go after existing funds, but also future earnings that have to be looked at. What to do next? Well, I'll tell you this. The symbolism here is enormous, because we've gone back to an era that I will call Robert's Crow during the presidency of Barack Obama. From losing the Congress to the Supreme Court's actions and voting rights and affirmative action, to the lawful killing of black youth. There's more that we can say about this. If we can't bring a federal case with a black attorney general and a black president, it leaves very little hope. Now, I've heard the argument the case might be weak. It depends who's prosecuting the case. And you know what? There are some things that you have to do for the sake of bringing a case. When there is such public outrage and public interest, the policymakers, and I'm calling the lead prosecutors here policymakers because they do make policy in their way, have to consider this very carefully. There is another option which the family hasn't considered and the lawyers are not trained to consider, which is this. If the federal government makes the determination that they can't bring the case, and the state has attempted to bring the case, although I think there's argumentation for how the state failed, then we have a problem with the nation itself failing to take action in these cases. And as an international lawyer, my recommendation, which I have not made to them because I'm waiting to see what happens, is to file a case in the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights against the United States of America for not protecting the rights of African Americans using human rights law as the anchor. Whether that would succeed or not is a different question, but it's been done. If you remember those Cubans, Brothers to the Rescue, who were shot down by Fidel Castro, they brought a similar claim and it was successful in the Inter-American Court. They were also successful at the civil level though. But I think that there's more thinking that we have to do, and sometimes you have to think transnational when the nation state is incapable of giving you justice.
As we ask the question, what should we do? I'm reminded of what happened when the World Trade Center was attacked. And the Red Cross directors addressed it so well. She said, stop looking at TV and watching the planes go into the tower over and over again. What you can do, you can give blood, you can give money, you can volunteer. As I'm thinking about this case, and I feel somewhat hypocritical about having this conversation, this is my 23-year-old nephew that was murdered by a black person a few months ago. Who cries for the many aunties and uncles and mothers that bury their children every day? I feel maybe it took a conversation like this to address the situation. We're burying our kids every day. I have 2 sons, but I had 2 nephews that died just recently. This one, and I have him sitting on my counter. People come in my house with a little candle by his picture. Nobody even says, who is that, Phyllis, and who was he to you? Some of my own personal friends, I told them that my nephew was murdered. No outcry. Very few words of empathy, of sympathy. Who cries for us? I think we need to teach something fundamentally different. What happened about good old-fashioned love? What do we do with our aggression? Nobody teaches that. So teachers, as a professor at FIU, and my colleague left, and I feel really, really bad because he had his hand up for a long time to address the situation. The teachers, we have to teach harder. Parents, we have to give our boys some tools. Right. How do you negotiate the terrains of racism? Preachers, it's a whole range of things that we can do. But it takes a situation like this for us to come together and have a civil conversation about hate, about racism, about a number of things. And the structure is overlaid and overlaid and overlaid. I too go to Antioch Baptist Church. And the sermon that was given last Sunday helped me deal with the situation about universal justice, about spiritual kinds of things that we don't talk about is there, what is death, what is purpose? And to a large extent, I think Trayvon's purpose in life is to help us understand many things, but I don't think that we're really dealing with that. But who cries for us? Who cries for us?
Try to be brief because I know there's some folks on the other side too. First of all, I just want to commend the whole panel for bringing some more light, less heat to a situation that requires more light. One quick question is, what does stand your ground protect you if you are in imminent danger of being killed by a police officer? I think that's one that a lot of us have on our mind. What we're dealing with here is the same situation we've been dealing with since the country started, which is that we have one of the best written constitutions on the planet. We have this whole body of law that's supposed to give us rights, and then everything really depends on who the actors are who are acting out the script. I'm sorry that public defender had to leave because I really wanted to get down into something really to the spectrum of what do we do next. Now, what he mentioned, I think, is very important about paying attention to who these prosecutors are, who these judges are. My problem is, okay, I do not miss an opportunity to vote. All this that I hear about, folks who don't vote, well, yeah, I imagine the lines could be longer many times when I go there. But when I saw the names of the people who are running for the judges, I have no clue who these people are, what they stand for, who is better than whom. So, where are we supposed to get that kind of information? I mean, is there some ways that those who are knowledgeable can get the word out? The idea of contributing to campaigns, of course, that's a sore point for us on many levels. The Citizens United was really kind of the last nail in the coffin of democracy. The idea that who wins the election depends on who has the most money, and there's something fundamentally wrong, especially in a community where people are trying to pay the rent, and who has time to support campaigns. But on the positive side, are there ways that we can address this whole question of who the prosecutors are, who the judges are,
It's then you get a chance to ask them, sum them up, and hold them accountable. They always come. And if all of us have friends who are attorneys, call me or call her and ask her, what do you think about that judge? And we will tell you, because we are before these judges every single day. I tried a case in Tallahassee, and the judge did everything for the state to win. And this was a young girl, and she was charged with arson. And do you know what happened? One black woman on the jury, she refused to give in. We were there until 11:30 that night, and one pulled out, and she turned everybody around. And when it was finished, I said, Judge, I am never going to come back to your town again, because that judge did everything. But one black woman decided that she was not going to let a young girl who is in college in Florida, FAMU, end up with a conviction for arson. And she held out from 10 o'clock that day until 11 o'clock that night, and everybody else caved in.
There are two black federal judges appointments sitting in the Senate right now, Judge Davis and Judge Thomas. Both of them need to be moved on quickly and done, and we get people on that federal bench as well. And particularly in the case of Judge Thomas, it's still being investigated by the committee. I would urge people to let Bill Nelson know you want him to be an advocate for William Thomas, who's a judge in Miami-Dade. And Judge Davies from Jacksonville has been held up by Senator Rubio. So anything you can get to Senator Rubio to withdraw his hold and let people know they care, I would urge people to do now, because those two judges are critical.
I listened to the president that said, President Obama said
stress that our black boys, our black young ladies are an asset to this country.
How do you explain to these children, especially black young boys, that they're going to be perceived as a threat, no matter what the level of education is, no matter where they live, no matter where they rise, or no matter how far they lift themselves out of the despair they probably were born in?
My daughter's sitting right there. She's my oldest. I tell her the truth. You have to have real conversation. Now, what the scientific data shows, I'm talking about the social science data shows, that when you don't talk about color and race, irrespective of the color of the child, you create bias. Because naturally, children associate color with positive and negative. Newsweek did an article that all of you should read a few years ago called "Is Your Baby a Racist?" And on the front cover was a white baby with blue eyes. And there were scientists that conducted this study to demonstrate that by not talking about race, by pursuing a colorblind post-racial America, you actually create the structure.
many things, but I don't think that we're really dealing with that. But who cries for us? Who cries for us?
The state legislature has a supermajority Republican. How is that possible? We have to be the change we want to see. We have to support each other. We have to support sisters like that. We have to tell them, sister, run for judge, and I'll send you $50, and I'll get down, you know what, not only will I send you $50, but I'll get 50 of my friends to contribute $50, and I'll walk in my neighborhood for you, and I'll get you some absentee ballots. That's what I'll do for you. No one is going to listen to us if we're always begging. I agree with you. I hate to see that. I hate to see when black attorneys talking about, oh, I want to be appointed by the governor. Negro, run. Challenge somebody and run for the position. Don't ask anyone for anything. Do it. It's your position. Run for it. So that's what we could do.